Okay, so this video is about the front cover of the Economist magazine 2019. Now on this first slide I've given the full picture to the left hand side there. That's the front cover of the Economist magazine. At the top it does mention Leonardo da Vinci and the 500 years from the point of his death. Now a lot of this is very Leonardo da Vinci-esque in the art form, but the first thing that leaped out at me was the giant 9 at the end of the 2019. Now the rest of the text in this is mirrored. I mean, Leonardo da Vinci used to do mirror writing, used to write right back to front. It was left-handed. So if you reverse the 2019 with a little bit of imagination, it looks a little bit like Eros. Well, it does to me slightly. I mean, there's probably people that are going to question that slightly, but there in the text, if you just want to read that, I'm just going to let you read that in your own time. But there you go. The next slide, I also noticed some other text that was forward written. So you've got hashtag #MeToo. Now that was a movement going on last year around celebrities coming forwards and speaking out about maybe sexual advances that they had that were unwanted, or sexual abuses towards them. Females mainly reporting males, but if you reverse that, O10, and then Google it, you'll see that there seems to be a trend of males reporting females of inappropriate touching. So perhaps we may see more of that in 2019. Again, I'm just going to let you read that in your own time there. Okay, so let's look at the Victorian man. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. Being it's one of the largest images in this whole front cover. Now he's got VR goggles on, he's got a phone, the scales of justice, cannabis and a baseball. And the symbol for DNA on his arm. Now the DNA symbol and the chest are both like tattoos, some marks. So perhaps marks of the beast, microchips perhaps being the DNA and whatnot. Maybe your medical records are going to be put on a microchip. I mean, over in Sweden right now, they're all queuing up for this microchip technology. Yes, it opens doors for them and so forth and so on, but you can also use it to pay for things and all sorts of other things. It may even replace passports, they're saying. And yeah, there's people wanting it straight away. This next slide is around the facial recognition. Now, I've reversed that image so you can see facial recognition there. But also Trump, it's got the same sort of markings as the facial recognition. Now over in China they have a social credit system and it's all using facial recognition. It monitors your gait, it looks at how you're behaving as a citizen and then gives you a certain credit rating. Now could it be that this sort of thing is going to be coming to the US? And I've put my reasons for that in that bit of text over to the side there if you want to read that. In fact, throughout this whole video, listen to me talking but also read whatever's on the actual slide itself and it'll give you a bit more information. And I've given a news article there around the social credit system in China. So yeah, just going to let you read that. And the next slide. So here we go. I'm focusing mainly on the mobile phone now. Now it's got one of those QR barcodes upon it. If you use an application to bring that up, it actually takes you to a website on the Economist site itself, just a web page, sorry, on the Economist site, and it's a news article, and it's saying that they found a journal entry of Leonardo da Vinci's that they've just recently translated, just a couple of months before he died in the May, 500 years ago, and apparently a time traveller appeared and whisks him off to the future. And he sort of goes into an explanation of what he saw, and his interpretation of it and the actual language used does seem to be in line with the date that he travelled from. It's very odd. You need to read that story to believe it. Now I've read it a few times and I don't know whether I believe it or not. And it'd be nice to see the original journal entry that it was translated from, because I'm quite skeptical of it. But if you have to digest that as being truth, the enormity of it is massive. It kind of says that time travellers are visiting the year 2019 and the past, obviously, and time travel is real. That's freaking huge. I mean, Leonardo da Vinci, I don't believe, was the type of person that would conjure up lies or anything like that, and it could explain why he was a bit ahead of his time with some of his invention pictures and depictions. I know it was just before he died, but who's to say this time traveller hasn't visited him a few times? Okay, so the next slide is one of Leonardo da Vinci's sketches of the ornithopter. It's like a flying machine that he drew up. And the arrow here is sort of pointing towards the moon. It's a crescent moon. Now the crescent moon is another occultic symbol for the mother goddess or whatever. You can see it all over tarot cards, etc. But the ornithopter, it looks like the arrow is actually pointing to the rear side of the moon. I mean, if it was pointing to the surface of the moon, it'd actually be touching the surface, wouldn't it? And maybe they would have put a flag on there or something to show the moon landing. But this kind of, to me, looks like it might be pointing to the reverse side of the moon. And because it's a man-made craft that's going there, maybe it's some sort of machine that's in the back of the moon, perhaps. Now, the moon itself, it's covered in craters, and when you look at the depth of the craters, they all seem to be about the same. So it could be metallic, couldn't it? Who knows? Anyway, on to the next one. So this satellite, the New Horizons satellite, if you look it up on Wiki, it shows where it's going to pass by, but doesn't mention anything for 2019. However, if you look at news stories for today, well, yesterday, 1st of January, it says about the satellite passing by the Ultima Thule, which is like a icy object body within space towards the Kuiper Belt. Now, there is also an occult society called the Fool Society, and they were looking for an area near Iceland or Greenland that they also called Ultima Thule. So there's a little bit of an occultic sort of link there as well. Now that bulldog that's placed on the map looks like it's placed near Iceland or Greenland when I tried to match it up to a globe. I mean, I'm not great at geography, so correct me if I'm wrong, but that does not look like England to me. Now I live in England and I've seen the map quite a lot on weather forecasts. That does not look like England. So I don't know where it is, but look at the actual wording that they used. Britain beyond Brexit. That's 3 Bs. Now, if you look at BBB accreditation, it's a score system in the US, and that kind of plays into that credit score system of China. So there seems to be little links and little nods to some of these that you're going to come across as I'm explaining in this video, that all seem to be tightly interwoven and linked in some roundabout way. But this could be some sort of nod towards a trade deal after Brexit for Britain with the US, perhaps. I mean, it's all speculation. Anyway, next slide. So here we go. I'm still looking at this, but this is about the Fuel Society and the Ultima Fuel, as they believed it was a place on Earth as well as this object down in the Kuiper Belt. But in this map that I've found of Iberia, which they believe to be the ultimate place, well, the Ultima Fuel place, in the top left-hand corner, if you see that little map there, and then you sort of like lay it over what the bulldog is sitting on, it looks a little bit more like that ancient map, doesn't it? Well, it does to me anyway. Like I say, my geography is not great, and yes, I'm sort of making links to what I found upon Wikipedia and on the web when I was searching into this imagery. So yeah, that's that slide. So moving on to the next one. Just bear with me. Here we go. Right, okay, so now the elephant with the strange tusks. Now those tusks to me look a little bit like stock market arrows, climbing upwards. But this is really odd, because the ivory trade comes to an end, or should, for raw ivory in April of this year, 2019. Perhaps it is a mark of that, but why is the arrow going up? Could it be that everybody tries to sell their ivory before it drops in value? Don't know. But it could also be a link to maybe India's GDP on the rise. I mean, there's also a picture of Gandhi there, and he's got like a hand loom. Now, the hand loom represents the sort of maybe the move away from the English rule, perhaps. You've also got the Brexit, and you've also got independence. So maybe it's a little bit of that, and it's a little bit about emerging economies that perhaps weren't so emerging before, perhaps coming to light in 2019. I'm not too sure on those ones, really. This one, now I knew I'd seen this image before, and I was racking my brains, where did I see that? And yep, I come up with it. It was like the leader of Thailand giving sort of the people the rights to vote and things, and then the last minute sort of repealing that and being a complete barefaced liar. So the actual people in protest were wearing like Pinocchio version masks of him, which is pretty damn sweet. But yeah, that's old news. Why show it on something that might be happening in 2019? Does that mean that it may start happening again? Does it mean that leader, that repressor, might be overthrown? I don't know. Very odd that it's there, to be honest. Yeah, well, I'll just leave that up for a bit so you can take in those images, take in the text, and then we'll be moving on. Okay, so this slide, this shows the stork delivering a baby with a barcode on the bag. I mean, that image itself made my stomach turn. I don't know about you. But anyway, for me, it's sort of like designer babies, DNA selection perhaps. I mean, there is that DNA link on the Victorian man's arm. Or it could be that babies might be microchipped at birth in 2019 in some areas of the world. Or it could be that babies are being sold, whether that's through IVF or cloning or otherwise. I mean, there may be laws one day passed to let you clone yourself, perhaps. To order. So if you do need some sort of blood transfusion or organs, they could be grown and harvested from your own DNA, perhaps. There's all sorts of connotations that get stirred up from that one image. I mean, the stork is quite rife, and the heron is quite rife through occultic links anyway. Okay, so at the top of the globe sits a panda. Now, I believe that panda represents China. I mean, look at him. He's quite grumpy looking with his arms crossed. He's looking towards sort of Trump there. He's got his back to Russia. Now, funny enough, it says Putin's pipeline on there. Now, there's also the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Now, there's a bit of contention and tension around the South China Sea. And Putin wants to put his pipelines there. Trump keeps putting his warships there. And China's built an island there with giant sort of air bases and military things and giant aerials and all sorts. Now, there's recent news articles that have come up, in fact, I put up on the next slide, around the contention that is happening right now in the early part of 2019. It does seem to be almost like a catalyst, perhaps, this area. I mean, you can see there, I've done the search at 1902. I mean, that's what, 2019? How weird's that? But anyway, that's beside the point. I did that search, got nothing to do with the actual cover. But look at the actual news articles that came up. And it's around the area that I mentioned. And also the threat to actually sink some of the US's aircraft carriers, which is a little bit scary, to be honest. And there you can see Putin's plan for South China Sea and oil prices and the fact that he wants to put a pipeline there. So yeah, it's all coming to fruition, that sort of area. Now, could it spell out the end of the world? I don't know. It's got a very high likelihood, perhaps. But then you've got to think who actually backs the Economist news articles. Hillary Clinton's on the board, or so I understand from my Google searches. Now, there is a depiction of a volcano, but I can't find a volcano that matches that in looks in its entirety. So, although it's a sketch of a volcano, perhaps they're referring to Yellowstone, because there's been quite a lot of activity at Yellowstone Park, with geysers going off, and more activity than there's been in thousands of years or recorded history. So, could it be that it's due for eruption? I mean, I don't know how to draw Yellowstone Park. It's quite a flat-looking area of land. It doesn't look like a volcano, but that does. So perhaps they know something we don't. I don't know. It's all speculation, but I couldn't find another volcano that looks exactly like that, with the top going above the top of the clouds. So, if anybody else has got a link for us, please put it in the comments. Now, this image is of sort of like a prehistoric creature, or it looks that way to me, walking the earth once again. Now, if you search for recent news stories around DNA and resurrecting animals that are extinct, you're going to find a fair few articles, and I've put the results of my searches there. A lot of them are late 2018, but yeah, that spills over in 2019. I mean, they were talking about doing it then, but there's a good chance that they will actually do it in 2019. So that hopefully is going to be news of 2019, that perhaps we've managed to clone and resurrect creatures. Now, if cloning does come about, then that opens a doorway to what I was saying earlier about perhaps cloning your own organs or your own blood pellets, and maybe even reversing aging, which is quite a big thing that's been talked about by the elites. Okay, so here you go. This is just a few quick ones. Ballot boxes down at the bottom. To me, that looks like a Brazilian flag and maybe a South African. Voting and democracy in those places has sort of gone a bit awry at times. Electric cars. Nothing new there, really. Perhaps new laws? Question mark. Not too sure. Mona Angelica Jolie. I mean, that's just freaking weird. But she is mentioned in this edition, in the last edition of last year, and I'm sure she will be noteworthy again in 2019. She has appeared before. She got appointed as some sort of lecturer at some college just a few years back as well, and she was mentioned in The Economist back then too. So yeah, she's quite noteworthy. So that's one to listen out for and look out for, I think, in 2019, is Angelina Jolie and the link to The Economist. Okay, so another quick one. Cannabis in his upper hand there, over on the right hand side, well, his right hand side. Well, Theresa May's husband is on the board of directors in a cannabis-based company in the south of England. They supply the nasal spray cannabis, I believe, to Canada. So it could be that it starts becoming made, legal to buy the stuff even in its own country, medically in the UK. And I mean, it's quite near to the bulldog of the Brexit. But it could be that it's going to be legalised world over. I mean, it has got quite a lot of health benefits, and there's quite a lot of scientific studies going into the use of medical cannabis. So we will see. We'll see what happens in 2019 on that front, but that's my own interpretation of what I'm seeing there. Okay, so ones I don't know about. So these are the ones I need help with. So the comment section, these are for you. So who is this man and who is this woman? I have no idea, and I don't know who they're linked to or whatever. I mean, that top guy, he looks almost like a Confederate. But no, completely lost with that one. And the lower one, the lady there, she has some sort of thing wrapped around her head. But I'm not too sure where that denotes from or what time period or what culture. But it does look like she's got a large quill. That's a very large quill. But yeah, if you've got any insight for me on those two and your thoughts on why they might feature on this cover, I would love to hear them. So please put them in the comments below. And if you would kindly subscribe to this, that'd be great. I haven't actually put a lot into this channel for some time. For me to continue doing so, I'd very much like to see that you're appreciating what I'm doing. So thank you for watching. Take care. Bye bye.